Welcome to Blitz Interviews. Like the game of chess, it's only lasts 10 minutes. I have a pleasure here to have Augusto to talk about user behavior. Augusto, can you introduce yourself and what do you do day by day?
Sure, thank you. Pleasure for having me. I am Augusto Barros. I work as a cybersecurity evangelist for Securonix. So essentially what I do is tell people kind of what Securonix does, kind of what our solutions are and kind of why we matter. Essentially, that's my job there.
Is it true when basically evangelist, you wake up and you can decide what you talk about it?
Well, I probably kind of for a brief time of your day, it happens like that, right? But you still you have kind of a lot of things happening kind of on the market, etc. And you need to keep kind of an eye on kind of how things are evolving and what that means to your organization, to your solution, to your product. So there's a lot of context around. It's not just kind of I'm gonna wake up, kind of look at kind of make coffee, kind of look at the ceiling and try to figure out kind of something nice to say. We need to look a lot about what's going on around us and contextualize what the organization does, our products, kind of our roadmap. So there's a lot of nice ideas.
Okay. It's a different show. We need to do a show about evangelist role. I want to talk about user behavior. Is this mean how Evgeny log in, what Evgeny like to drink? Like explain to someone that never heard about the term.
We are talking about user behavior analytics, right? So what does that mean? It means that we are observing the user behavior in your IT environment to try to identify situations where there may be some risk involved, right? So when you have threat activity. So when you look in, for example, the user behavior on the authentication, how they are authenticating against your systems, right? Are they doing things as they usually do? Like, are we observing any type of deviation in the user behavior that may indicate, for example, that their account has been compromised? If they're accessing data, are they accessing data in the same pattern that they used to do and not kind of doing something that may indicate that they are hoarding data for a data exfiltration situation or a data leak? So what we're essentially doing is looking at what the users are doing and how they are interacting with your IT environment to identify if there's any threat-related activity going on as part of that behavior.
Do I need to have a complex mathematical algorithm? Do I need to have AI, ML? What is actually needed to do something like this? Because as a human being, probably cannot just sit down with Excel and analyze this.
Right. Well, when you have a bigger toolbox and you have more tools inside that box, you can do more things. And kind of sometimes a work that is very hard to do with a hammer may be easier to do with a different type of tool. And that happens with behavior analytics as well. Right? If you have simple Boolean logic, like what we used to have with SIM, you can do some behavior monitoring. But what happens is that if you need, for example, to profile the activities of each user individually, the simple Boolean logic won't do it. Right? So you need something that will be able to learn that behavior and build, for example, a baseline of behavior for that user so you can find the deviations in a more meaningful manner. So as you start evolving the use cases, the need for more advanced analytics will also kind of grow. Not only the most advanced in machine learning, AI type of things, there is certainly room for the more advanced analytics, but simple statistics or kind of some of the more advanced statistics, the algorithms, kind of Bayesian logic, for example, is extremely useful for behavior analytics. Some vendors will try to sell it, right, as kind of the most advanced AI ever, but just with kind of the traditional statistics, we can do a lot. So we can implement a lot of behavior analytics use cases with simple statistics. Of course, a few other things will require more advanced in machine learning, but kind of it really depends on the use cases that you have in your hand and what you want to do.
In my mind, it's supposed to save time and find stuff that it's hard to find. But when I say save time, we don't want to false positive what we say in the industry, and we don't want to waste people's time in a chase that may be wrong. How do I avoid it, and how popular is the false positive in this industry in general?
Right. That's an interesting conversation that I always have with people when we are discussing the application of machine learning or more advanced analytics to threat detection. And there is a certain impression that you can use the machine learning to reduce the false positives. And that's true for certain situations, right? Let's go back to that kind of authentication example, right, that we used. Oh, I want to see if someone is starting to do authentication in a odd manner, right? So that may indicate that the account has been compromised. If you try to do that with Boolean logic, right, with simple rules, you're going to generate a lot of false positives, right? Because there's no way for you to find the small deviations, a change in behavior over time. So on that case, the machine learning will give you less false positives. On the other hand, if you're looking for a very specific situation, like, oh, this user is coming from a certain country that I do not trust, right? So I believe kind of there is risk involved in kind of users coming from that country. I do not do business there. I have geopolitical enemies there. Why not have a rule? Anytime I see a login from one of my users from that country, alert. That's far more precise than using machine learning. So you see that kind of machine learning can help you on the cases where you're trying to find things related to dynamic thresholds. But kind of when you have very specific situations that you want to detect, there's no point of trying to use that type of analytics.
Good. How many variables may be involved in tracking user behavior?
Well, you can start with just a few, right? You can look at kind of the time, location, the device that is being used, right? Kind of just need a small number of variables to start doing basic user behavior analytics. As you grow the number of use cases, you're going to have to grow kind of the features that you're analyzing as well. So we have customers, for example, they use our solution to do behavior analytics on custom applications, right? So they are seeing how their employees are accessing certain content into healthcare data, for example, right? So they're looking to try to identify things like patient snooping. You're going to need information about the transactions within that business application. You're going to need more variables. So kind of as your use cases grow, you're going to need more variables. But the traditional, we'll say, authentication type of behavior, you just need a few. You don't need that much.
If I'm just finished college, university, army, or whatever it is, and I'm eager about cybersecurity, is something like user behavior analytics is the field I want to go and dive in? Is there a huge future for it, or it's not something that they will start and maybe move later on to do?
I think kind of cybersecurity today is very broad, right? So if you want to, I normally kind of like to see people kind of spending some time kind of with a more generic view, right? So they can find kind of places that are more interesting, where they are, they may have kind of more opportunities to invest in specialization. So in that sense, kind of should we start with behavior analytics? Well, that may give you opportunities in vendors of this type of technology, organizations that are using that in a very advanced manner, but that of course will narrow your possibilities from the start, right? It is a narrow field, is used in many places, not only UBA solutions, but there are things like CASBs, for example, that will have UBA capabilities, right? So they need that type of skill in order to include the behavior analytics within the cloud access security broker. But it is something that's some kind of a part of a niche, right? So I would say if you're starting, probably kind of keep an eye on kind of keeping your options open for more time. But if you see kind of that it's an interesting thing, that kind of you have opportunities there, kind of that it will make sense to start investing more on that, on the more kind of specialized set of skills.
I guess last question. If you have a crystal ball in 5 years, where do you see UBA evolve?
The convergence with SIM, it's something that we started seeing, 4 or 5 years ago. And I think that's kind of there's no coming back from this direction, right? So I think kind of talking about UEBA solutions, not just the technique, right? And they kind of separate from SIM doesn't make sense anymore, right? We're looking at both together. We are also going to see UBA practices being kind of expanded into things like the CASB that I mentioned, the cloud security posture management, EDR, right? Kind of becoming XDR tools. So I say we're going to see user behavior analytics growing as a capability from many different types of solutions. At the same time, probably kind of the deeper and more broader kind of set of use cases, kind of from an overall threat detection perspective, will keep growing within the SIM. Right? So I think that's what we're going to see with the user behavior analytics practice across the cybersecurity industry.
Augusto, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you.